Trump remained seated. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a calculated 6-minute standoff that forced federal marshals to leave their posts and advance toward the defense table, hands hovering near their tactical belts, in a moment that has fundamentally altered the trajectory of American legal history. We are looking at a situation where the former commander-in-chief openly dared the judicial system to physically force him into compliance, and the system blinked. If you thought the previous indictments were the peak of the tension, you were wrong. This is the moment the Cold War between Donald Trump and the Department of Justice went hot. Hit that subscribe button immediately, because the details we are about to break down are not being covered with this level of granularity anywhere else, and you need to understand exactly what just happened inside that federal courthouse. Let's reconstruct the scene that occurred at 2:47 p.m. Eastern Time inside Judge Eileen Cannon's courtroom. This was supposed to be a procedural hearing regarding the handling of classified evidence, specifically the logistics of how the jury would view top-secret documents. It is usually the driest, most boring part of a criminal trial. But the atmosphere shifted violently when the court clerk announced the judge's arrival. The protocol is etched in stone. All rise. It is the universal signal that the court is in session and that the law is the highest authority in the room. In that packed chamber filled with veteran prosecutors, a dozen defense attorneys, and nearly 50 members of the press, everyone stood up in unison. Everyone except the defendant. Donald Trump didn't just fail to hear the command. According to multiple credible sources inside the room, he looked up, acknowledged the order, and then deliberately returned his gaze to his phone, scrolling through a feed while the judge stood waiting. This was not a passive act. It was an active rejection of the court's legitimacy. When Judge Cannon, who has previously been scrutinized for her favorable rulings toward Trump, realized what was happening, the silence in that room became deafening. She paused, she waited, and then she issued a direct order. "Mr. Trump, the court is in session. Please stand." Most defendants, even the most hardened career criminals, would comply at this point. The psychological weight of a federal judge giving a direct order is immense. Trump didn't move. He didn't even flinch. He reportedly typed a few more characters into his phone, locked the screen, and then stared back at the bench with total indifference. When the judge repeated the order, adding the weight of her authority to it, "I am directing you to stand," Trump delivered the line that will likely be quoted in constitutional law textbooks for the next century. He declared he would not recognize the authority of a kangaroo court. And that is when the Marshals moved. You have to understand the gravity of this specific moment. United States Marshals are not private security. They are the enforcement arm of the federal courts. Their job is to ensure the safety of the judge and the order of the proceedings. When a defendant refuses a direct order, their training dictates a specific escalation of force. They stepped away from the walls. They crossed the well of the court. The sound of their footsteps was the only noise in a room paralyzed by shock. They approached the former president of the United States as a non-compliant subject. Smash the like button if you realize how close we just came to a constitutional catastrophe. Because in that split second, we were inches away from a physical altercation between federal marshals and the Secret Service agents charged with protecting Trump's life. The marshals stopped feet away from the table. The Secret Service detail tensed up. It was a Mexican standoff between two branches of the same federal government, brought about by one man's refusal to stand up. Why did this happen? What triggered this explosion of defiance? We now know, thanks to declassified memos released just hours before this hearing, that the stakes had been raised significantly. The FBI had just introduced new evidence, surveillance logs and timestamps proving that Trump personally directed the movement of boxes containing some of the nation's most sensitive secrets. We aren't talking about letters or souvenirs. We are talking about documents detailing foreign nuclear capabilities and active military operations. The evidence suggests he moved these boxes specifically to hide them from his own lawyers and federal investigators, all while claiming he had returned everything. This context is critical because it explains the judge's demeanor. Judge Cannon had reviewed this evidence in chambers just minutes before taking the bench. She saw the proof that she had been misled, that the court had been played. When she walked out, she wasn't just a judge presiding over a case. She was a representative of a legal system that had been mocked. And when Trump refused to stand, it wasn't just rudeness. It was a continuation of that obstruction. It was him saying, "I withheld the documents and I am withholding my respect, and there is nothing you can do about it." This 6-minute standoff, and yes, it lasted 6 agonizing minutes, is being called a categorical break from American tradition by constitutional scholars. We have had presidents fight the courts before. Richard Nixon fought the release of the Watergate tapes with everything he had. He fired the special prosecutor. He claimed executive privilege. But when the Supreme Court ruled against him, Nixon handed over the tapes. He respected the mechanism of the final verdict. Bill Clinton was dragged through a civil lawsuit while sitting in the Oval Office. He hated it. He fought it. But he sat for the deposition and answered the questions because he understood that the office of the presidency does not make you a king. Trump has shattered that understanding. By refusing to stand, he is asserting a new theory of power, that the person of Donald Trump is superior to the institution of the United States courts. He is arguing through his actions that he is not a citizen subject to the law, but a sovereign entity who sits in judgment of the judges. If you are finding this analysis valuable, make sure you comment below. Do you think the judge should have ordered him arrested on the spot? I want to read your take. The fallout from this is going to be radioactive. Defense attorneys across the nation are watching this with their jaws on the floor. Every public defender in Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles is now preparing motions based on what they are calling the Trump precedent. If a former president can refuse to stand for a judge because he thinks the trial is unfair, why can't a drug dealer? Why can't a tax evader? If the courts allow this behavior from Trump, they effectively dismantle their own authority over everyone else. You cannot have a justice system that demands total submission from the poor, but accepts total defiance from the powerful. That isn't a legal system. That is a caste system. The Marshals were put in an impossible box. If they laid hands on Trump to force him to stand or to escort him to a holding cell, they risked triggering a physical battle with the Secret Service. They risked creating an image of former president in handcuffs that would likely incite civil unrest across the country. Trump knows this. He is banking on it. He used his own security detail as a human shield to defy the court, knowing that the Marshals would hesitate to spark a constitutional crisis on live television, or rather in front of a live audience. And let's look at the reaction from his camp. This wasn't a moment of lost temper. It was a strategy. Immediately following the hearing, while the legal world was still reeling, Trump took to Truth Social to double down. He didn't apologize. He didn't claim he had a back spasm. He attacked the judge as nasty and biased. He attacked the Marshals as political pawns. He framed his refusal to stand as a First Amendment protest, a courageous act of civil disobedience. This narrative is already hardening among his base. They see a hero refusing to bow. The rest of the country sees a defendant destroying the rule of law. The two realities are drifting further apart, and the tension is snapping the cables that hold our society together. The implications for the trial itself are terrifying. If he won't stand for the arraignment or the status conference, what happens when witnesses take the stand? What happens if there is a guilty verdict? Will he refuse to stand for the jury? Will he refuse to be sentenced? We are looking at a trial that could descend into total anarchy, where the defendant turns the courtroom into a campaign rally stage and the judge is powerless to stop it without causing a national incident. Legal experts like Andrew Weissman and Neil Katyal are already suggesting that the judge has grounds to revoke his bail. In any normal case, a defendant who displays this level of contempt and refuses to follow basic orders is taken into custody immediately. They are labeled a flight risk or a danger to the community because they have proven they will not follow rules. But Trump is not a normal defendant. Revoking his bail means incarcerating the leading candidate for the presidency. It is a decision that carries the weight of history, and Judge Cannon now has to make it within the next 72 hours. The Republican Party is fracturing in real time over this. Behind closed doors, senior GOP officials are panicking. They know that law and order is a central pillar of their platform. It is hard to run as the party of law and order when your leader is literally sitting down in protest of the law. They are caught between a base that demands total loyalty to Trump and a general electorate that looks at this behavior and sees chaos. This isn't going away. This wasn't a bad day at the office. This was a deliberate stress test of the Constitution. Trump pulled the lever to see if the system would break. It didn't break today. The Marshals stepped back. The hearing continued awkwardly, but the cracks are visible. The authority of the court has been dented. The fear of enforcement is gone. We are now in a waiting game. The judge has to issue a ruling on this contempt. If she finds him, he will pay it and do it again. If she ignores it, she loses control of her courtroom forever. If she jails him, the country explodes. There are no good options left, only dangerous ones. And that is exactly where Donald Trump operates best, in the chaos where norms dissolve and power is the only thing that matters. We will be tracking Judge Cannon's ruling hour by hour. Will she issue a bench warrant? Will she modify his release conditions, or will she fold? The answer will tell us if the United States still operates under the rule of law, or if we have quietly transitioned into something else entirely. Do not forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. The mainstream media might move on to the next distraction, but we are staying right here until we know the ending of this story. This is the most dangerous moment in American legal history, and you are watching it unfold in real time. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next update.